Hi, I'm Joe Farace. Welcome to this weekly, bi-weekly, monthly series of podcasts that are unscripted and unrehearsed, and where we take a look at film photography, digital photography, as well as infrared photography. So let's get started. Let's kick off the podcast by going into the field to see what's happening with our Snap a Frame a Day project that's part of National Photo Month. Take it away.
Well, I'm here at the O'Brien Park gazebo, and hopefully you can see it over my shoulder here. And we're getting ready to start the Snap a Day in May program that I mentioned in a blog post a few days ago. And the idea is to take a different picture every day during May off a roll of film of 36 exposures. Since there's only 31 days, we have 5 left over. So I thought what I would do today was shoot at least 3 frames to get the whole project started. So join me now. Hopefully this isn't too windy, and we'll see what happens. Thanks. This is my first view. It's probably so windy you can't hear me, but this is my first view as we'll walk around and take a look at some more things. I'm inside the gazebo right now. It's a pretty cool place. You get the taste of what the Snap a Day in May project starts out being like. So thanks. See ya.
If you've been following this podcast or maybe my blog, you know that for May, which is National Photo Month, I created a project that I took one picture every day, and I planned on putting that together into a YouTube video along with some narration to explain what was in my head, how I was going about making these pictures. Well, I got the images back from the scanned images back from the darkroom a few days ago. I took a look at what was going to be involved in creating the video that I had a concept for. And I realized it's way too much work for me anyway, because this is, like I've told you many times, a one-man band. I don't have any help, no assistance, just me. And so I decided I'm going to do one of two things. I'm either going to make a blog post that's basically a film review, but I've also been thinking about the possibility of doing a film review video. This is something I've never done before. I know that some people, especially Analog Innovations, I believe it is, they do this all the time, and they do a beautiful job at it, and I'll put a link right here to tell you where you can check out some of their videos, because they're great. I'm not be able to do anything as comprehensive as what they do, but I'm thinking about maybe that's what I'll do. So I'll do one of two things. I'll either do a blog post that's a film review for the ADOX 100 that I shot, which to give you a little preview, it looks pretty nice. I'm not sure about the exposure. I'm waiting for the film to come back. When I get the film back, I'll have a better handle, and that will be included into whatever form the review takes, whether it's a video or a blog post. And now we come to everybody's favorite part of the podcast. What national day is it? Before we talk about what national days we'll be featuring on the blog, let's take a look at what national days we won't be featuring. So what national days will we be featuring on the blog? There'll be 2. Number 1 will be Nature Photography Day, which is on June 15th. And look for a blog post that'll have some tips on photographing nature closer to home. And the big day, of course, is June 29th, which is National Camera Day, where we'll talk about all the cameras that we love and all the cameras that we use. So stay tuned, it's going to be great. And now it's time for a little Q&A. Some of the questions I get from watchers of these videos or from my blog are interesting. For instance, one person wanted to know what I used on my hair. Kind of interesting. And another wanted to know if it was real, if my hair was real. Yes, my hair is real. It's also really mine. But the question I get asked the most is about my apparent love for Canon film cameras. Well, it wasn't always that way, and I'm really not a Canon fanboy in case you're interested. But back when I started shooting real 35mm cameras, I used the Minolta SLR, an SR1 actually. But I always wanted a Nikon, and I couldn't afford one until I got my first Nikon, a Nikon F2. It was F2 FTN, I believe. Anyway, I became the ultimate insane Nikon fanboy. I just dismissed anybody who wasn't shooting with Nikons, and anybody who had any other kind of camera, whether it's a Canon or Fuji or any Minolta, whatever. That I just aren't you shooting with a Nikon? You should be shooting with a Nikon, because all my heroes at that time in the 70s, like Artie Kane and Pete Turner, they all shot with Nikon. So I became the ultimate obnoxious Nikon fanboy. Fortunately, for me anyway, for my sanity, I didn't stay that way a long time. And somewhere, but I did stay there for a while. Somewhere around the late 90s, mid 90s, I got the hankering for something else. And I thought it was a Leica. And so I talked to who was then the editor of Shutterbug, and he said, you don't want a Leica. You should look into Contax. After all, it has those beautiful Zeiss lenses. And then I became a Contax shooter. And that's why the first camera I bought when I got back into film was a Canon 167 MT, because that was my first Contax camera. I used that for a long time until somewhere around 2000 or thereabouts, I forget when, my friend Rick Salmon introduced me to the Canon EOS system and suggested I give it a try. So for a long time I was kind of running some Canon film cameras and some Contax film cameras, although much more Contax gear, because they had a beautiful rangefinder system and a wonderful SLR system as well. But when digital came in, at that point, Contax pretty much disappeared. So I felt like I've never given Canon film cameras the respect that they deserved. So when I was shooting Nikons and thinking I was better than everybody else, a lot of people I know were happily shooting Canon A1s and AE1s and AE1 programs and the AV and the AT. And so for some reason, and I'm not sure why that's all true, it all came back to me when I started looking at film cameras. I thought the first thing I should do is get an AE1, because that was kind of the camera at the time. And what happened next was I became obsessed, as I kind of tend to do sometimes, of getting all of the A-series cameras, which I've done and I've written about in my blog, and you'll be seeing it here off and on this videos. So it's I'm not a Canon fanboy. I like using their film cameras. I like using the few SLRs and digital cameras that I have, and I just like taking pictures, and I like cameras in general. So I hope that answers your question. And also there's an address below in the text that tells you if you have any film, so this is especially for those companies who sell film or produce film that would like to see their films appear in these videos. There's an address where you can mail it. And in the meantime, to wrap things up, there is a little box opening video that has to do with something that we talked about in the last Q&A period of the podcast. So let's take it away to our senior unboxing correspondent. Hi, in our last podcast I mentioned that I like to keep a journal, and in it I keep track of different quotes that I use in my blog post, as well as ideas for upcoming blogs. So this is the current journal book that I use. This is a moleskin notebook, and I've been writing in it with various fountain pens. I also mentioned that one of the people that I quote a lot in my blog posts is Mark Twain. And so one of the things that got me interested in getting a new pen was the fact that the pen company that Mark Twain used to write all his stuff, and he used the fountain pen, was a company called Conklin, who had been around since the late 1800s. Now, they still actually make a replica of the pen that Mark Twain used. But I was able to order up from one of our friendly neighbor on Amazon a Conklin pen at a really good price. I had looked around, and they had this particular model for about half price. This is not the Mark Twain model. This is, I think, what they call a Durograph, which is a kind of a replica of a 1920s pen. And it's green because, you know, green is my favorite color. I'll try to do a little close-up. But it's a nice pen. It comes with some cartridges if you like cartridges, but also installed inside of it is a ink converter that allows you to use bottle ink. And I plan on putting in an ink from Diamine, which is a UK company who makes an ink called Writer's Blood that's kind of a reddish brownish color. And I thought, what the heck, if you have a green pen, why not a reddish brown ink? So anyway, this is what I'll be using to make my notes in my Moleskine journal. And I'll be copying different quotes. In fact, I got one here I want to throw right at you that I wrote down the other day. I thought it's kind of interesting for the world that we're living in these days. And it's from an unlikely source. It's from Dwight D. Eisenhower. And in it he said, "A people that values its privileges above its principles soon loses both." Something to think about. And the other thing I'd like to say is, save the koalas. I'll put a link to their website down here, especially for my viewers in Australia. Think about your national animal. Take care of it. So, back to the podcast. So I'd like to thank all of you for watching. And I'd like to ask you to do all the YouTube stuff, like subscribe, that would be nice. And give us a like, that really helps with the YouTube algorithm to get more people to watch these videos.